Going into a debate with the stakes being that high and Trump hadn't agreed to another debate.
Why would he?
The stakes were so high. So that's an example of what I mean.
Oh, Joe blew it.
I haven't felt that emotion, anything similar to the emotion I felt that day and for quite some time, other than the grief I felt when my mother died. I knew what was going to happen to our country.
What?
I knew the harm that was going to happen to people.
We're going to close the border?
Are you fucking kidding me?
Whoa!
This guy wants to create a ballroom for his rich friends while completely turning a blind eye to the fact that babies are going to starve when the SNAP benefits end in just hours from now? Come on.
Kamala Harris is now out shredding Joe Biden. Something has happened between these two, and she's doing interviews where she's commenting on Joe Biden's phone call to her the moment she was about to get on the debate stage with President Trump. And this is a new tone from her. She was on this podcast, lacing into him. Here's what it sounded like.
I'm in the hotel room with Doug, with my husband, and the president calls. I was told that he wanted to call me so that I'd be ready, and I was so sure it was to buck me up and go get him. And he did say that for the first beat. And then he went on to talk about a group of people in Pennsylvania who were saying bad things about me because they heard I was saying bad things about him. And when I hung up the phone, it was unbelievable. And I was angry and deeply disappointed. It was so unnecessary. There are only two people in the world other than me that has debated this guy, Hillary Clinton and him.
And he beat you both.
What it's like. It's going into a debate with the stakes being that high and Trump hadn't agreed to another debate.
Why would he?
The stakes were so high. So that's an example of what I mean.
Oh, Joe blew it.
You took something
from Joe blew it. Joe called her and rattled her off her game. And Joe said, there's a group out there talking bad about you, and they're doing that because you're talking bad about me. So maybe you should stop doing that. Now it's time for my nap and some ice cream. I gotta go. Good luck tonight.
From that, you took an underlying message about one's intentions from that. Because I would. If someone called me in the lead up to debate prep and said something like that to me, I would assume that they don't want the best for me.
Oh, so her performance is now shattered or shaken by Joe.
My takeaway is his motivation was all about himself.
Oh,
that's what I would assume from that.
Yeah.
I would assume that.
Yeah, right. Obviously, right. Yeah. It wasn't about my performance at the debate.
Yeah, well, I think it was. That's why you're talking about this story. Now, here was another one.
Wasn't Joe Biden then, to put it on him, wasn't his refusal to recognize his own frailties the reason that you faced a nearly impossible task?
I ran against Donald Trump for president, and Donald Trump ran on a platform that was in large part, I believe, misrepresenting his intentions to the American people. I do believe that there are a fair number of people that voted for Donald Trump who believed him when he told them that his first priority on day one is going to be to bring down prices. And he didn't. And you combine
can't do it on the first day. He's working on it.
Intention with also what was at play in terms of massive amounts of mis and disinformation.
Now, forgive me.
And a truncated calendar in terms of the clock.
Yeah, cut her
I want
off.
to interrupt you because that is a world-class pivot, but it is not the question that I asked
That's
you.
right, it's not.
Which is about Joe Biden's failure to recognize his own frailties and what that did to you. The question is about Joe Biden. Are you still reluctant to criticize the former president?
In what regard, please?
Well, just in terms of that question. So you went on...
What exactly would you like to ask? Why don't be more specific if you don't mind?
Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
But he had frailties. We all saw the debate.
I do believe that Joe Biden had the capacity to be president of the United States, and I have never doubted that he had the capacity to be president of the United States. If you want to talk about whether he had the ability to endure what a race for president of the United States would require in that political environment in 2024, as I've said in the book, I had concerns.
I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you won't go to that prolonged frailty question? Now, we saw the debate, we saw the difficulty he had marshalling his thoughts.
I have answered that question. I do not believe
I think it's just hard watching the debate to see how there could not be a problem long term with someone who can't marshal their thoughts. I'm not saying his acuity wasn't present.
I talked about that in the book.
Okay.
And I also mentioned the context in which that debate debate occurred. And you'll probably remember how I talked about that in terms of what his travel schedule had been, that what he had been enduring in terms of the timing of that debate. I talk about it extensively in the book. I'm not shying away from that. That's why I wrote it in the book, because I do know it's a question people had.
Yeah, so it doesn't make any sense. So she had concerns about his ability to campaign, but not concerns about his ability to be president. Makes no sense because she's not congruent. But she also admits back in this exchange that she was in a state of shock once she learned that she was going to lose. And that makes sense because she ran a deluded campaign. They elevated her like she was a saint and anointed her to the top of their ticket. And then reality hit hard.
I was in a state of shock.
Really? Did you think that the day before that you were going to win the election?
did.
Yeah. And so when did the proverbial penny drop?
When I got a call from my campaign manager that it looks like we need 200,000 more votes that we can't find, meaning it's just the math, the numbers. And the thing I kept saying over and over again, I was in a state of shock. I was so inarticulate, but maybe very articulate. What I kept saying over and over again is, my God, my God, my God.
Really?
Over and over. I couldn't stop. I haven't felt that emotion, anything similar to the emotion I felt that day and for quite some time, other than the grief I felt when my mother died. I knew what was going to happen to our country.
What?
I knew the harm that was going to happen to people.
We're going to close the border?
I knew it. I knew what was going to happen.
Right, so that's Kamala. So she mourned, and I believe that she probably did. She probably thought that she was going to be the president. Everybody around her was like, you know, Ann Salzer says you're going to win Iowa. She's like, we are? We're going to win Iowa? Yeah. So here's another one. I think she's dropping F-bombs in this one. She's doing all these interviews. She's probably going to run for office again. So warn your kids about Kamala's filthy mouth.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Whoa!
This guy wants to create a ballroom for his rich friends while completely turning a blind eye to the fact that babies are going to starve when the SNAP benefits end in just hours from now? Come on. So
I know babies are going to drop dead everywhere, just like COVID too. Everybody's dropping dead because you couldn't get a jab in your neck.
what? I'm not going to be distracted by, oh, does the guy have a big fucking hammer?
Whoa!
What about those babies?
Right.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have, you're the border czar. Maybe you shouldn't have given all of those benefits to illegal aliens and then we could feed American babies, but they don't care about that. So she's dropping F-bombs. She's on one. And this was from Ian Sams earlier this week. Remember this dude, he now is in this clip explaining side by side of these liars about Joe Biden's actual competency. Okay. He met with him like a handful of times is what he says. And when we listen to this, he met with Joe on a Zoom meeting one time as a participant in the meeting. And he counted that while they were all lying to us. And now Kamala's pounding the table, effing, effing, effing. They've all got that memo. They all have potty mouths now because they really can't use their brains to communicate effectively. And Ian Sams was a good communicator. Unfortunately, he was a liar. And here is what this sounded like.
How often would you say that you interacted with the president in person?
I interacted with him pretty infrequently.
So, monthly, what are we talking about?
Very infrequent. I think I met with the president a handful of times during my tenure in the White House.
I want to introduce Exhibit 2 that's being passed around. It's a tweet from Alex Thompson at Axios summarizing, pulled a couple quotes of interview you did it on MSNBC. And one of the quotes says, when I deal with him, he is sharp, him being President Biden. And he is asking tough questions. Do you recall this?
I got to say, that doesn't look anything like the president that I know. When I deal with him, he's sharp. He's asking tough questions. That's the President Biden that so many of us experience every single day.
So the basis for this statement was your interactions somewhere between 1 and 5 times.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's a bit misleading?
I think it was pretty direct and honest that when I do deal with him, he's, sharp, and he was asking incisive questions during my meetings with him.
Dealt with him 5 times in 24 months. That's not exactly a large scope of knowledge on how he
Every
interacts
single
with
day.
Staff. You don't think it's missing some context?
I don't.
Do you think that statement suggests that you deal with him more than you did?
I don't think so. I mean, I spoke about my own interactions with him. That's the President Biden that we experience every day.
But to the best of your recollection, 4 meetings, 2 were in person.
Twice.
The 2 that I described to you at the very onset in the Oval, one was a Zoom where he was at Camp David and I was a participant in the meeting.
A Zoom.
The phone call. I think there was another meeting or another engagement.
3.
But I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to get an understanding. So the immunity decision was virtual with him at Camp David. There was a phone call regarding Hunter Biden's testimony.
Yes.
An in-person meeting regarding Hunter Biden's testimony. And one other in-person meeting?
About Special Counsel Hur's testimony. testimony.
About special counsel, so 2 in-person meetings.
Sure, at least that, yes.
Okay.
At least 2. Okay, might be 3 though. Over 24 months. And just lied every day, just like what you see there. Lies by omission. No, this is the president that we know. The president that we see every day. Very, very lying. Very, very scandalous. And he knew what he was doing. Now, of course, Comer is referring all of this, and Kamala should be a part of this inquiry, to Pam Bondi. Comer sent this one earlier this week, said, all right, hey, Pam, the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform has conducted an investigation into whether Joe Biden's cognitive decline was hidden from the American people by his inner circle of advisors and whether critical decisions attributed to him were in fact authorized by him himself. The committee has found that Biden's aides coordinated a cover-up of the president's diminishing faculties. Additionally, the committee has found that these same aides utilized an ad hoc, inconsistent, and ineffective process to obtain Biden's assent to certain key decisions, not only the pardons and the executive orders, but maybe the judges too, which raises significant questions about whether Biden knew, let alone provided a decision about the use of an auto pen that bore his signature. Now, while his deterioration was evident to the American people, and consequently, robust systems should have been put in place to document the actual will, they didn't. They took no action to establish this record at all. Indeed, Biden and his unelected aides worked recklessly and concertedly to hide the president's condition from the public. And so therefore, barring documentation establishing a record of his decision-making, the committee deems Biden's executive actions that were signed using the auto pen void. And the committee determines that action by the DOJ is warranted to release and to address the legal consequences of that determination. Now, the committee has released a report, The Biden Auto Pen Presidency, Decline, Delusion, and Deception in the White House, documenting its findings attached here too. This report details instances regarding Biden's physical and mental decline, the ramifications of that decline on executive decision-making, and steps taken by the Biden White House to conceal a president losing his capacity to govern. Notably, the committee did not investigate any specific executive actions taken by Biden about national security, including but not limited to covert and military actions. Those decisions would have been facilitated by the NSA, Secretary of State, Defense, CIA, and DNI, just to name a few. And Comer continues, he says, the committee requests that you investigate all executive actions taken during the Biden administration to ascertain were they duly authorized by Joe. And we also request you investigate the actions of these key people, specifically these two, Anthony Bernal and Amy Tomasini, as well as the doctor, Kevin O'Connor. They all invoked and refused to testify, saying, here, we need you to undertake an investigation to determine if any action taken by these 3 individuals constitute criminal activity. We've got broad authority to do this, and now we are doing that, signed by your friend, James Comer. And here was more on this from Jon Stewart. He says, you actually think that Joe Biden was a competent person? Here's what Kamala said.
I don't mean that in the personal sense of not ready. I meant it more in the sense of policies that he wanted to implement or the way that they were implemented or the governance obstacles more than the competence conversation.
I'm not talking about competence. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about competence at all. No, I believe he was fully competent to serve.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
That surprises me, actually.
No, I do. But there's a distinction to be made between running for president and being president.
What's the distinction?
Well, being a candidate for president of the United States is about being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace, having tomatoes thrown at you every step you take.
That sounds lovely.
And that's not the presidency?
It's more than a notion.
Get involved in public service, ladies and gentlemen.
And to be the seated president, the sitting president, while doing that, it's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a hard case to make for people that he didn't have the stamina to run, but he had the stamina to govern. Because I think most people view the presidency as a marathon run at a sprint with tomatoes being thrown at you in terms of governance. So I think that drawing that distinction. And again, I recognize the incredibly difficult place you are in with personal relationships. And, I've been surprised at how much people talk about loyalty. And it's funny in the book, it creeps in every now and again because it'll be like, I love Joe. I'm loyal to Joe. He's the best. But, he gave that 11-minute speech and it wasn't until 10 minutes in that he said anything about me. Like, it's hard, I guess. You're still people. It's hard to get the personal feelings of.
Anyways, she thinks that Joe was, I guess, not competent to run, but was competent to serve, which is obviously insane. So Comer also said, we're looking into everybody. All of the pardons are null and void, and we're going to be asking Pam to take it from here and start her investigation so that we can bring charges. Here's Comer.
Many were granted pardons by the auto pen on the last day of the Biden presidency with no record that Joe Biden played any role whatsoever in the authorization of those pardons. So I think all those pardons from Dr. Fauci Fauci to the Biden family to Adam Schiff, the January 6th committee. The list goes on and on and on. I think every one of those pardons signed with an auto pen with no evidence that Joe Biden was involved in the decision making, I think every one of those can be declared null and void by the Department of Justice. And I think our evidence in the investigation will make that decision hold up in court.
And we want to see some internal divisions within this cabal of criminals. And if Kamala wants to talk about Joe, and then Joe or Hunter wants to talk about the other individuals who are criminals, then we can start using their testimony against themselves and get justice finally after a full administration of political weaponization and criminal cover-up. Time for justice, pardons null and void, and even Kamala is cracking. She's breaking with Joe, now out there with her book, now on the podcast, talking a little smack against him. We'll see where it goes.